Bonsoir and welcome to the Get French Football News Show. I'm your host Nathan Staples, and joining me this week are Eric Devoon and Philippe Bargil. It's another international week, which means another two French friendlies to feast upon, but there's always more than that when we chat about Les Bleus. But before that, here are your latest headlines. France continued their recent run of success in international friendlies with a pair of wins this week. Thursday's 4-0 victory over Armenia in Nice was expected, but was far from automatic as both Yohan Cabaye and Lassana Diarra impressed in midfield. The Crystal Palace man scored a cracking goal, and alongside a late brace from Karim Benzema and an Antoine Griezmann opener, Les Bleus had more than enough to see their opponents off. Yesterday's trip to Denmark was a different affair, as Olivier Giroud, making a somewhat rare start, bagged a brace inside 6 minutes. He also spurned a chance to score a hat-trick shortly thereafter. Denmark did manage to snag a consolation in second half injury time, but the result was never in doubt. The Under-21 squad defeated Scotland 2-1 on Saturday with a goal from Corentin Tolisso and an own goal. Monaco, however, will be less than pleased as Tiémoué Bakayoko left the match injured with less than 10 minutes gone. Elsewhere in international fixtures, Paris Saint-Germain defender David Luiz picked up an injury in duty for Brazil, meaning his presence for the next month or so is a doubt, a period that includes both matches with Real Madrid in the Champions League. And that's your very brief news for this week. Remember to head on over to our website and our Twitter feed for all the latest. The links are in the description of this video. Also, feel free to get involved with the show tonight by tweeting at the GFFN show and use the hashtag the GFFN show as well, please, if you could. So we'll dive straight into the two friendlies and two victories that France have got this week. A comfortable 4-0 win against Armenia, followed by a strong 2-1 win away at Denmark, give Les Bleus some confidence heading into some more tougher fixtures in November. Philippe, what did you think to the two results they got this week?
It was pretty standard. Sorry. So first of all, the Armenia game. I think Deschamps has pretty much picked what he thinks will be his starting 11 in June this summer. So let's start from the back. You've got Loris in goal, who is going to start in front of Mandanda or Areola if Areola does make the squad. We'll probably have a fight between Sagna and Debuchy at right back. I do believe that Saka will be partnering Varane. Evra, it will be his last tournament. What is really interesting is that Lassana Diarra, who we haven't seen in ages, has partnered Cabaye and Matuidi and played very well. You can one word about Cabaye's game against Armenia, who weren't that bad. They were not 4-0 bad, but we were quite solid and quite good going forward. I really like Cabaye looks transformed compared to when he was playing at PSG. The strike he took it so well, and you can just tell that he's playing football week in week out and he's enjoying it. He really had a really good game, and I'm extremely happy for him because he really needs that kind of season before a major tournament. So hopefully he doesn't get injured. And then you had the front three: Valbuena, Benzema, and Griezmann. Griezmann was a great understanding with Benzema. Against Denmark, it's a bit ironic because against Denmark, who are a stronger side, we basically played the B side. We of the starting 11, there was only Varane who started and Griezmann. Against Armenia, Benzema scored the 2 goals, but again didn't really, shall we say, convince anyone. And in the second half, Giroud was pretty much the same. A bit disappointed to see Martial on the left wing, but overall, 2 easy games on paper, and they were quite easy on the pitch.
Eric, what did you think to the two results? Were they pretty easy going in the end of it, wasn't it?
Yeah, I was a little bit surprised Denmark didn't put up more of a fight. I think that their own sort of adventures in qualifying had, kind of taken that out of them, and they played what really ended up being a somewhat experimental side. themselves really yesterday. But I have to agree with Philip. I think that Cabaye is going to leave Deschamps with some tough choices in midfield. I mean, I had sort of envisioned this 4-3-3 being Schneiderlin, Pogba, and Matuidi without a doubt. But Cabaye on the first game against Armenia looked really impressive, and the same thing with Diarra. This is the kind of headaches that we want Didier Deschamps to have multiple options and multiple looks to give this team, even within this 4-3-3 framework. It was a really impressive return from Diarra and return to his best from Cabaye. I think that the confidence that he's getting, both from the way that Palace are playing as a team and his role in that team is really important for him. And the same for Diarra. Marseille haven't had the greatest start to this season, but he's been, I mean, for me, probably that team's most consistent performer, given the problems they've had in defense and going forward as well. And these are also the types of players that we can look to, for leadership too. I mean, Matuidi's had a great international career, but for as good of a player as he is, he's not had a ton of experience in international tournaments. Last World Cup aside, whereas Diarra was sort of a consistent fixture in the 2010 World Cup qualifying cycle. So this is a positive. I mean, we're seeing players almost come out of the woodwork and in terms of where they had been at the last round of friendlies, and it's what we need to see. France is we've seen their record in tournaments before, going back to '98 and 2000. That this is a team that should be in the very top echelon of international football, and they haven't really shown that. I mean, we talk about going out in the quarterfinals as being a good result in the World Cup. I mean, I'd seen that mentioned. I don't really buy that. I think that France should be aiming higher. I mean, there isn't perhaps a defined world power in world football right now. So with the talent that we see on display both in Ligue 1 and abroad, there's no reason this team shouldn't be perhaps even the favorite for this tournament, particularly with it being at home.
Sorry, Nathan. I just want to go back. I mean, who would you pick? Actually, he's really. I completely agree with you. He's really giving Deschamps a headache because Diarra. I don't know. He does have some kind of experience. He went off the radar by going to Russia, I think it was. Now he's back with Marseille. And really, I wouldn't be surprised if he starts, say, our first group game at the Euros in place of instead of Sissoko. That's one of the things. And the second thing that really needs to be addressed is who's going to be right back. I really hope Sagna does not get the pick because he's still, despite all the training he has at Arsenal and Manchester City, the guy still can't cross the ball to save his life, and Debuchy is still the superior player. But the big debate I would like to have is who is going to partner Varane this summer and then for the future. Because Sakho can be completely reckless, but like we said a month ago, he shows fight. And we need some kind of warrior-type guy like him, like he did at the Ukraine. And I think the starting 11 Deschamps put against Armenia was very close to what we're going to see in the first group stage game, and without a doubt, what we should be seeing against Germany and England next year. I think it is maybe
it's November. Yeah.
November.
Yeah.
November.
I mean, okay, so if we look at Matuidi and Pogba as being, an inveterate part of that midfield three. I mean, we have to. I mean, I don't think anybody would disagree with the fact that those two, are France's best players on their day. They're world-class players, undoubtedly. But that being said, to give those two the license to get forward that they need, for me, I think you really need, a more defensively oriented player at the base of that midfield three. Now, so I think, I think it's got to be Schneiderlin. His defensive instincts and ability to sort of mop up at the back are what's needed. I mean, we see it with PSG and Mata. We see it with Barcelona with Busquets as well. I think for as fantastic a player as Diarra can be, I don't think that his defensive instincts in midfield are as perhaps as finely attuned as Schneiderlin's are. Not to mention his size; he's not as physically imposing a player as Schneiderlin either. I really think that needs to be the three. And as for right back, I mean, it seems like these players are almost tripping over themselves to play themselves out of the squad with their performances. I mean, Jalai gets a chance against Denmark, and for me, is really poor. I mean, the way he had played last season and early this season for Lyon, I would have said, Lyon bias aside, that the dynamism that he shows, both going forward and in defense, that Jalai should be the first choice for me. But then on the basis of this performance, it's almost as if the occasion's getting to him, and that he's not able to deliver the types of performances that we've seen from him.
He's not taking his
really
chance.
consistent basis for Lyon.
Mm.
Yeah, it's really interesting.
Just one last thing, Nathan. And what about the partnership with Varane?
Well,
I mean, Sakho makes sense. I do worry about game time for him. I mean, there was the Guardian rumor mill this morning had a thing that Roma are after Sakho.
Oh.
Well, okay, if he's getting first team games on a regular basis, great. That's the issue. I really worry that if he's playing every third match or the League Cup or the Europa League with Liverpool, remains to be seen how Klopp's going to sort things out. That's going to be a negative. I mean, we saw how iffy Cabaye is a great example of this. Iffy players can be on an international stage if they're not being given consistent first team football, and that's somewhat reflected with Sagna as well. To be quite frank, I mean, he's not started every match week in week out with Manchester City during a lot of his time there too, and I think it's sort of dimmed his performances as well. So whoever it is, it needs to. Mangala's done better this season, but I'm still unconvinced by him on the whole. It's probably the most vexing question, I think, for me that France are facing at the moment is who that center back partnership is going to be. I think going forward, we talked a little bit about some of the great young center backs the under-21 team has. I'm looking at the likes of Laporte and Samuel Umtiti is too old for the under-21s at this point now, but I think that he's also a great prospect. He's been a little bit more uneven this season at Lyon, but has shown himself to be a solid player in general. So those two I think are of a similar age to Varane. I think could make a nice potential center back pairing, or potential partners, I should say, going forward into the 18 and 20 qualification cycles.
The thing is, the more I think about it, the more I'm telling myself that Deschamps is probably not prepared, because we are really in the last phase of preparing this tournament, and France to me are the favourites. We may or may not talk about it later, but Germany are still the shambles that we said they were last month, and I don't know. It's still the same old thing with Loris being number one and Mandanda being number two, but those two guys are approaching 30. We've got young enough a centre-back pairing, but we've been playing friendlies for a year and a half now, and we haven't seen that much of Kurt Zouma. Kondogbia, I would have liked to see him a bit more. I don't know. I feel like Deschamps
for this round of fixtures, I think.
Sorry?
He was injured for this round of fixtures.
All right. My bad. But I don't know. Maybe he could do with trying a little a little more with untested players, and I'm really looking at the front line there because Benzema and Giroud are closing in on 30, and we've got some fantastic number 9s coming up, which are Lacazette, Martial, and Fekir when he's back from his injury. And this is we are hosting this tournament, and all the other big nations are not playing particularly well. I mean, they are there for the taking, I just thought maybe the youngsters would have been more could be more shall we say used to the big occasion. But maybe he's going to do that against England and Germany, because actually, yeah, I did look it up. It's a double header. It's 2 games in 4 days. So it's against Germany and France, and then I think it's at Wembley 4 days later. That's going to be interesting. It's going to be really interesting.
That'll be the real test, I think. That'll see exactly where Deschamps' men are at this point in time. But touching on those, which we'll get onto later, I think. But my opinion is sort of, I agree with Eric about Chalet. It was a bit disappointing to see him not perform as well, because he has a real opportunity. I mean, Debuchy isn't playing for Arsenal, and there's no way he's playing for any club until probably January when he moves on. I can't see him staying. He's not starting. He's behind Bellerin, and he's not going to get past him anytime soon, because he looks like a really nice prospect. Yeah, he played the opening game against West Ham, and then hasn't played since. He's played a Carling Cup game, I think, since then. So he's not starting.
I think I saw him in the Emirates Cup against Lyon, which he was pretty good in, but I think Arsenal scored 4 goals in 10 minutes or something ridiculous like that. But yeah, I mean, I completely agree. Bellerin is a fine player, but it's a shame that Debuchy is finding himself so unfit. So I'm not even sure what's going to happen there. I mean, is he going to be even in the squad? I hope so, because he is a very good right back.
And then you mentioned that Sagna has never really been outstanding, but at the same time, when Zabaleta is now fit again, is relegated to second right back at Man City. So there's two, so there's 2 backup running right backs that might even start for France at the moment. So Chalet's got a real opportunity.
Apart from the money, I never really got why Sagna left. I mean, it's not like he didn't strike me as a mercenary like Nasri. I always thought that he'd stick to Arsenal because it's a fine club. Okay, won't win much, but it was okay. But I really didn't quite get why he would move to Manchester City, because Zabaleta to me was always a better player in his position.
I've heard this topic before though, but at the same time, it's regular that footballers tend to think that they will be better than anyone, so they don't see it as a competition, which is a weird thing to see from the outside. But when you start thinking inwards, it makes a lot more sense that you're never really at that stage where you think that someone's definitely better than you. But Chalet's got a great chance. The midfield, Kabai's been outstanding in the Premier League this season, and I think he's given Deschamps not necessarily a headache, because, as you mentioned earlier, Eric, those 3 are the midfielders for me. He gives them a different option, because to a Matuidi and a Pogba, he's obviously more attacking than playing deeper, but he's a little bit more creative on the ball. He's a bit more of a metronome, a bit more of a pivot sort of player that will dictate the play. And I can imagine him playing, especially, I'm imagining these friendlies, he probably will play in at least one of them, and they will test him against these bigger sides to see if it's worth, maybe, controversial to say, take out someone like Matuidi for a game like that, and use someone who could like Cabaye, who might be a bit more disciplined, might be able to dictate the game more, a la Pirlo, Verratti to Italy or something like that, or a Xavi. Not saying Cabaye's in that same ballpark, but someone who's able to distribute the ball in such a way to get those attacking players like Griezmann, who was fantastic, I thought, against Armenia, and is really the best attacking option, in my opinion, for France. But there's some interesting points. But I do want to talk about one player that's been talked about a lot recently, and that's Olivier Giroud, who's not playing well at Arsenal, and has probably got a free pass simply because he scored 2 of the simplest goals I think I've ever seen. I think I don't know what the Danish goalkeeper is doing for the first goal. It just seems to dive over the ball because it's straight at him. So I want to get your opinion on this first, Eric. Giroud, I can see why he's going to get into the squad, but personally, do you think he should?
I mean, honestly, if Ntep hasn't been struggling with injury and Lacazette was on the form that he had been last year, no, I don't think so. I think that at this point he may be included based on his reputation and the fact that he offers something different. I mean, if we look at the striking options we have, Benzema's going to be the starter. That's a given. But I really have to feel like we look at the likes of Martial, Lacazette, and Ntep, all having experience playing in wide areas, and it seems as if those players are all of a piece to some extent, whereas Giroud offers more of a typical target man presence, being this big guy who likes to head the ball and win aerial battles, as he had done at Montpellier, as he does on his day, again, at Arsenal. So, yeah, were things a little bit different in terms of injury and form for some other France's players, Fekir being another one. I can see him being left out of the 23, especially with the way that Martial started at Manchester United.
Philip, what's French opinion on Giroud?
It's not very good. It's really not that great. The fact that Arsene he's not really letting him go. It's just that he's finally admitting that having Walcott up front does work better for Arsenal. We saw it against Manchester United, and for France, he's just not quick, and he'll hold the line fine against, shall we say, physical sides, but he's not. I don't know. It's not particularly working, but he is quite lucky in that Benzema is not particularly working for France either. So he's quite lucky there, but there are players like Martial and Lacazette who are coming through the ranks, and they should challenge him. And Giroud has been a late starter. He's still a very, very good player. He's good with shall we say, holding the ball up, just like lots of players his height. So he's got a lot of strengths, but when it comes to sharpness and being technically astute inside the penalty area, there's much better. So yeah, I certainly wouldn't put him in the starting 11. He'll make the squad, no problem. I doubt he'll miss a single squad of Deschamps until the tournament. But yeah, the doors are closing a bit on him. It certainly doesn't seem to have lots of fans in France, even the Arsenal ones.
And he doesn't have a fan here either, because I'm starting to wonder that because he is that first option. We saw Martial play at the wing on against Denmark, which I thought was a mistake. I really fear that he's going to play some point for France because of Benzema might not quite hit the heights that he can. Although I do think he's a world class player, especially on his day. But he's a real worry that if he gets injured in a game or if Benzema misses a game for any reason, that Giroud's the next option in Deschamps' mind. And all I can see is that Giroud gets that chance, Giroud misses it in a big game, maybe in the quarters or the semis, and France lose 1-0 to someone like, I don't know, Germany, Spain, a bigger team. Those chances that he scored against Denmark would absolutely not be goals against any of the top 6 sides going into Euros, because their goalkeepers would have stopped it. And
speaking of which, I mean, this is not to say Schmeichel is a bad goal. It was Schmeichel in goal, wasn't it?
I believe so. Yeah.
Yeah, he's not a bad goalkeeper, and he's actually having quite a good season. I thought he was just had an off night, or probably as the opportunities came a bit too soon for him, or maybe he got I don't know, got unlucky. But he's still not as bad as the goals show.
No.
So I think Gio, it was more a case of Gio being quite lucky than Schmeichel being any bad.
Yeah. Well, I always remember Schmeichel, Casper especially, has the little brain, what we would call in England brain farts, of not really having. He does have these off days. That's why he's never really gone further than Leicester, really, for Casper Schmeichel. But at the same time, I fear that's going to cost France at one point. But I think Sakho could cost France at one point as well. But I want to talk about that midfield a little bit more. We have got a bit of information that Deschamps would sort of see Cabaye as his initial starter, Eric. Do you think a midfield of him, Matuidi and Pogba is wise going into the Euros?
I mean, as I just outlined, I think that I understand why Deschamps wants to start with Cabaye, but I think between his size and his instincts that it has two things. One is it forces a bit more defensive responsibility upon Pogba and Matuidi, which necessarily limits their ability to be attacking catalysts. I mean, we've seen on multiple occasions how important getting those two involved in the attack can be. But the third is, the other thing I would worry about is, Cabaye, between his physical size and his, tackling ability or lack thereof, really gives me a lot of pause as a main defensive midfielder. I know he's more of a deep line playmaker, a la Andrea Pirlo, but I just think if we look at some of the potential opposition, I think that they're just going to be a little bit too tricky for Cabaye to act as a shield for Varane and Koscielny or Sakho, whoever it is. I really worry about about the way that midfield is affected. And I think that we talk about loyalty that Deschamps has shown certain players, and it's sometimes a bit confounding. And I'm not knocking Cabaye at all as a player. I think he can serve a great role both in the squad and being a change of pace off the bench if France can control the game a little bit more. But starting for me, I really think that in the struggle with the struggles that France have had up front, it's absolutely essential if this team is to succeed at this tournament to have Pogba and Matuidi be given the most attacking freedom that they possibly can. Yes, Benzema scored a brace. Yes, Giroud scored a brace in this last round of fixtures. But we've seen time and again that their goal-scoring records on the biggest stages are inconsistent, to say the least. And if this team is really going to seize the opportunity that's being presented to them via a lack of quality and consistency from their potential opponents, they really need to be as involved in the attack as is possible.
Yeah, and I agree with you on that, Eric. I mean, the thing we also seem to forget about Cabaye playing in that position is I've seen him on numerous occasions lose his head a little bit and get red cards. And in that position, you can't afford it. I mean, if he's run ragged for 90 minutes because he's having to sit back while others attack and he simply isn't quite good enough for that position, then it's going to cause a problem. And France really need to be careful that they have excellent players in a lot of positions, but teams have a real X factor, and they're the things that win you tournaments most of the time. And when you've got a player like Paul Pogba, who's such a difference sometimes in games for Juventus, I've seen it numerous times where he just does something out of the blue and you don't even expect it, and that wins you a game. And he's that kind of player, so you need to make sure you maximise his ability. And Morgan Schmeichel maximises at his moment. That's why he probably wouldn't be taken out if Cabaye were to start instead of maybe Matuidi.
The
But,
big problem
yeah.
we do have is that we don't have a defense shielder. I mean, we don't have a player whose only job is to just sit in front of the back four and allow the other two midfielders to just go forward. Something a bit of a trequartista. I think that's the right term.
Trequartista, the sort of
Yeah.
the deep-lying centre forward, yeah.
Sorry, my Italian is not as good as my English. And just be both, just stand in front of the defense and organize a play from deep. I would say Schneiderlin is the shall we say the optimum choice, but he can be probably sometimes a bit too attacking minded, because he is quite good when he goes forward. He's quite good with the ball. It's going to be quite tricky for Deschamps, because if he's going to keep Cabaye, Pogba, and Matuidi, it's the same midfield trio as at the World Cup, and it kind of worked, because we did have a good World Cup for the first time in decades, that's basically the big debate will be to say, are we going to include Sissoko in there, Zhao in there, Schneiderlin in there? It's good for competition, but I don't think we still have a quite a valid idea of what the front three is going to be. There can still be some surprises. Maybe have Arsenal's Francis Coquelin being called up and starting games. So late in the preparations, I doubt it, but it is possible. There's always a surprising nominee in the 23.
And I love the French optimism of decades when you when you reached a final in 2006 and won it 2 decades ago.
Yeah.
So, forever French optimism. When you've not won it and got anywhere close in '66, it hurts a little bit more, I think. But we will talk about
either very good or very bad. For the rugby these days, we're quite bad.
Yeah, I would like to get your thoughts quickly on that, Eric. Coquelin? Maybe could he make the squad as that sort of defensive midfielder? Maybe there's even a replacement for Schneiderlin should he get injured.
Yeah, I certainly don't see, with the role he's played at Arsenal, why he's not been more involved in the current setup. Diarra has certainly done well for Marseille, and maybe those are the matches that Deschamps is watching more. And again, maybe it's just for Deschamps the willingness to go with an experienced hand in Diarra, but in terms of being, as you were saying, Philip, a more defensively oriented midfielder, Coquelin does seem, sort of the obvious choice. I mean, Maxime Gonalons for Lyon is, another player who's been capped 7 or 8 times, I believe. It could be an option, but it's something that I think is needed. Again, Schneiderlin can do well going forward, but I also think that he's shown, particularly now at his time at Manchester United, that he, at least for the national team, maybe more so than his time at Southampton, that he's shown that he's willing to shift his game a little bit, and be a little bit more defensively oriented than we see him, than what we've seen from him at club level. So I think that he can do that role. A bit more efficiency and reservedness than we might have expected from him, say, a year ago when he was still at Southampton.
Yeah, and I think it's an interesting point that we have to bring defensive midfielders in here, and I think that moves us perfectly on to talking about Deschamps himself and his reign. He obviously took in charge after the Euros in 2012 and saw a little bit of an upturn despite the struggles in qualifying for the 2014 World Cup. 2016 will be a big test as they're seen as one of the favourites, really. Philip, what's the opinion in France on Deschamps' reign so far?
There isn't one, so it's good. Generally, when Domenech was manager, he got killed every time. Even when he was doing something good, nobody would even admit it. Well, it probably didn't do much good since that final in Berlin. But generally, the media it's a bit like we all have to criticize and point the finger at someone. Right now, what the media are doing is that France are okay to watch. The squad is good. The defending on set pieces could be better, but generally speaking, we've got the best we have at this moment in time to manage the national team. I personally think it's a shame to have such a good manager being on the international scene so early, because he's a very young manager. I mean, I watched him play. I'm not
I
old.
watched him play, and I'm 23.
Yeah, I'm 29, and I watched him win the World Cup and the Euros, and I had no idea who Imi Jake was, or if he was even a player before, or for which club he played. And he I mean, let's put down the layout. Sorry, the facts. He made Monaco Champions League finalists, which they lost in 2004 against Porto. He won titles for Marseille, which was the first time in, I think you can say decades now, because it was actually 2 decades, I think, because since from 93 to 2010, I believe, they didn't win anything. And we had such a rough time. I mean, we had such a rough time finding, getting rid of this bad boy, Xavi-like attitude from the players, with Samir Nasri, Jérémy Ménez, Hatem Ben Arfa, who would just do absolutely nothing productive at all when they were called up, and Blanc suffered from that a lot, because he made the situation a bit better, and well, to be honest, it was quite hard to make it worse after Dominic, but it was still a failure. Euro 2012 was not very good. I mean, fine, yeah, we got knocked out by the eventual winners, but yeah, it wasn't. There was still a lot of problems, and what Deschamps did with Nasri was what needed to be done. We needed to say, okay, you are a problem to this team, to the team spirit, to this squad. You're out. And that's what happened, and we just afterwards we had a miracle, because France had their first decent tournament since 2006. So there you go. And basically, and one last thing is that I don't really know who we could replace him with, because, like I said, he's the best we have.
Eric, what do you think of Deschamps' reign so far?
Yeah, I think that this team is. I think this team is moving forward in general. There are a lot of really promising young players who I think he's integrated into the squad and really starting to get the best out of them. I think that Pogba, Griezmann, Fekir, Varane, Matuidi is a little bit older, but I think that he's really come to the fore quite a bit more under Deschamps' reign. There's definitely positivity here, but he's sort of stuck with a group of players who are talented as individuals in their day, but it's really hard to make them fit together in a squad that sort of makes sense positionally for all of them. I mean, I'm looking at the likes of Valbuena, Griezmann, perhaps even Pogba to some extent. There's not necessarily the ability to sort of jigsaw them all together to get them to play in their best positions. And, that and the lack of competitive fixtures, I think, has, been somewhat of a hindrance to him. It's really hard to, evaluate him based on these circumstances. And, yeah, I have to agree with Philip. I think that he's done really as well as could be expected, given what he's been presented with. I mean, attitudes and injuries. I mean, Nasri and Ben Arfa are, I think, 28 years old. They should be, based on their talent, an important part of this squad, if not an important part of the starting 11. And that being said, why, based on the attitudes of them and injury issues other players have had, It's sort of been this weird set of circumstances that I frankly find would be hard to deal with for any manager. And to achieve the results that Deschamps has, I think you've got to hand it to him. Yeah, there's been some uneven results. I'm thinking about the Brazil match back in March and a couple others, but truth be told, I don't see how what's happened could be improved upon. And that's really the bottom line. I think he deserves to continue. I think he deserves to manage at least through the 2018 World Cup. We've got some of Fekir will come back. Varane, Pogba, Griezmann, are going to continue to develop. Not to mention the likes of Anthony Martial, as well as some of the youngsters that are coming through. I'm looking at the likes of Laporte, Titi, Tolisso. There's there's a lot of younger talent that I think will be more fully mature for the 2018 World Cup. So there's a lot to be said for not only what Deschamps has done to this point, but for the continuity and development of these players that we can look at going forward to the 2018 World Cup.
Philip, what do you think is the minimum he needs to achieve at Euro 2016?
A semi. If he doesn't get a semi, people will be disappointed, but I don't think people will ask for his head. What I'm really worried about for him is that he's not getting proper experience. He's getting big managers with a lot of experience. He's basically only called upon every 2 years, and most of the managers of other big countries are just extremely old. No offense to Mr. Hodgson, and have sorry.
He is very old.
he is quite old. Yeah, he's a bit older than Deschamps, and have achieved a lot in the game. Deschamps has achieved already a lot for his age, but he can achieve so much more. I mean, I don't really see. There's so many managers coming and going. It's really a whole merry-go-round, and since we've got all these established managers who used to be managing the same clubs for years, like Sir Alex Ferguson, Arsene Wenger, and with Ferguson leaving, it just added Manchester United into the mix, because then they had Morris, who is also a good manager but wasn't a good fit for them, and now they've got Van Gaal. Things aren't going well and not well at the same time, so nobody really knows. And having Deschamps in that merry-go-round would be much more interesting than just him sitting. I don't really know what those managers do all day. I think they watch. I don't know. I know that some of them go and watch the games live just to pass the time. But it's also their job. But I don't really see. I see a big waste there, because he is quite young and he should be managing players every day of the week, unless he's really lazy, which I don't think he is.
If he is lazy, then it's a good excuse. Well, Eric, he says a semi is pretty much the main expectation. Say they fall at the round of 16. Hypothetically.
Wow.
Yeah. That's what I'm thinking. Eric, do you think he's under pressure then?
I mean, he has to be. It depends on who the opponent is. I mean, let's be honest. We haven't seen the draw, and the seedings that FIFA/UEFA use to put these teams into pots are, often don't bear out the results. So, maybe France get a bad draw and only come second in their group, and then get another bad draw. I think it's frankly too difficult to say that right now, but if it were a loss to the likes of, say, an Albania or a Northern Ireland or a Wales, one of the smaller teams that were in the tournament, I think it would be really problematic. If they lose to the likes of a Germany, a Belgium, a Spain, I think you'd have to take it with a grain of salt and have confidence in what Deschamps has shown to date, and allow him the chance to move on and give him, one more chance with that set of players heading into 2018.
Come on, guys, we're not going to lose in the round of 16. It's almost impossible. Not against Iceland, or I don't know. I honestly can't see us getting knocked out before the quarterfinals. I think quarterfinals will probably be our first test, but because I don't know, it just seems so. I don't even want to contemplate what's going to happen if we lose in the round of 16 on home soil. I mean, we're usually quite good on home soil, so that's good.
Well, that was the point of the question, really. It definitely got under your skin even thinking about it. So I'm trying.
No, I mean it's not even possible. Come on, it's
Well, the one thing that I will say in that being impossible is that France are ranked 22nd in the world right now. According to
we're
FIFA.
that good, yeah.
But as hosts, they will be a top seed. I believe that's correct.
That has to be, yeah.
So that may be their saving grace in terms of getting a decent draw and not falling at the round of 16.
Well, you never know. Wales are good, so you don't want to face them. They've got Gareth Bale.
But Wales will be a top seed as well.
Yeah, probably, I would imagine. But at the same, you have to think that I could tell even from Philip's reaction, I'm trying to imagine the rest of France's reaction if anything like that happened. And Deschamps, I don't think he's quite as safe as he might be.
I'm not even sure if the FFF, so the French FA, would have thought about something like that happening. Because they've got so much faith on Deschamps, and so they should. I mean, why shouldn't they? Because he did have a great World Cup, and it's there's no reason not to keep trusting him. So I'm not even sure what they would do. They would say, "Wow, we lost against Northern Ireland in the round of 16. Where do we go from there? We have absolutely no idea."
Well, it's an interesting.
So basically, we won't. That's the main message I'm sending to our listeners.
It could be an awkward quarter-final where they struggle and Deschamps decides to leave on his own terms. You never really know because it's a home it's a home Euros. He's young and he can get another job quite simply.
Well, what I was actually speculating at some point, that was before Deschamps extended his contract. I think he did quite recently. Is that Deschamps would win Euro 2016, then quit, or just not renew his contract, and then manage Arsenal.
It's an interesting.
That was my plan, shall we say? But I don't know if it's going to happen. Especially since Arsenal start playing well against the big boys. So
I have a feeling if he wins the Euros, he's got to have at least have one shot at the World Cup. As a team that wins that, you've got to keep yourself on to have a go at that one. And with the talent that's, as I shift onto another topic, in the under-21s is displayed. I mean, they played Scotland at the weekend, and you just read the names off the team sheet. It's Hassan, Benjamin Mendy, Aymeric Laporte, Jordan Amavi, Rabiot, Bakayoko, Tolisso. These are all Coman, all starters for reasonably good clubs, and it's a really bright future, isn't it, for French football? Just looking at that, isn't it?
Yeah, it's good. What I'm still very annoyed with is that we still can't seem to get to a tournament. So it would be nice to do that first, and then we can boast about our academies, about our great players, and they are great players. I mean, let's see how all these guys develop. But it's the future has always been bright. I mean, we've always had great academies. Football is being played a lot in France, and it's coming along quite well. I still can't believe we haven't had an under-21 tournament since God knows when. And quite a lot of promising players never got that type of experience. So that is a shame.
I do want to talk to you, Eric, about one player in particular in the under-21s who I personally think might make the France squad for the Euro 2016, especially if someone like Kantep is injured or something like that, needing a wide man. Kingsley Coman's playing for Bayern Munich slightly more regularly than I thought he would be at this point, with injuries aside as well. Could he sneak into the squad?
I mean, it would take a really remarkable run of events. I think we talked about Dimitri Payet in the recent past as well. And I think that Payet could be an option where Intep and Lacazette and Martial, more players like this not available. I think it's great the way Koeman started for Bayern, and I think that I can't believe that Juventus let him go. I mean, this is a player who came on in a Champions League final, and Juventus let him walk without really too much of a fight. It's quite surprising. I think that Diarra's inclusion surprised me. Who knows what Deschamps has up his sleeve? But it would take a really remarkable season for Koeman, I think, to be a part of that 23. And even more remarkable turn of events for him to actually see the pitch were he to make the squad next summer.
I think he's almost going to be pushing there because, I mean, he's played 7 games so far for Bayern Munich. That's including about 4 substitute appearances. He scored twice, created 3 assists in those 7 games. He's played in front of some much bigger players. I mean, he had an excellent game when I watched them against Mainz the other week, where he scored and created assists. So I don't know. I have a feeling if you're looking for a replacement for Griezmann or Valbuena on the wider sort of areas, I think he's an excellent option to have. But we will move on to our heroes and villains section.
Just one last thing, very quick, 2 seconds. I'd much rather have Koeman on the wing than Martial.
There we are, yeah, because he's much more of a winger style. Yeah, he's much more of a winger. I agree. I can imagine him making it in the end. He might even sneak out and tap. I'm not certain, but I think he might do.
I think he would. I mean, judging by the reputation, and everybody in front would say, would you rather have a player who plays for Bayern or a player who plays for Rennes?
Deschamps doesn't say Rennes at the moment.
I know.
No, Philip, that's a little bit unfair.
I know it is unfair, but that's what people are going to say. It's completely unfair, but
like I said a month ago, let's see what kind of season Intep has. If he's scoring 12 or 15 goals, reaching double figures in assists, he's got to be in that 23.
It's always going to be interesting for those peripheral spots, and we will keep debating them up until the moment it happens. So,
what is really unfair on Intep is that Liga is much less mediatized than all the other leagues. I'm pretty sure most French people will tell you if Intep does get into the squad, they'll say, "Who the hell is this guy?" Whereas I would have known about Koeman because he plays for Juve and Bayern. That's football. That's football in France, I'm afraid.
Well, it's time for the heroes and villains, I think now. Eric, who do you have this week?
Yeah, hero. I mean, Lass Diarra. I mean, what a great story. To be, out of football, literally, and now to turn it in a shared performance for the national team for in his first call up in years. The season he's had for Marseille, it's well deserved. Deschamps is making a bold decision to include him in the 23 based on just a handful of matches. But he, again, Armenia aren't the greatest opposition, but he looked up to it. So well done for him. I also like to a word for Lorik Sana, the not center back who captained Albania to their first ever major tournament this weekend. Well done for him.
Agreed. Philip, your hero?
Would have to be Kabay for his comeback. I'm really happy for him. Good display against Armenia. That's it really. That's all you've done this week, and I'm quite happy for him.
Any villains, Philip first?
Not really. I did think about it, but I'm not. No, I don't really have any. Sorry.
No, that's absolutely fair enough. Eric, have you got anyone on your list?
I wouldn't say anyone's a villain, but I think Mandanda on that Denmark goal, that's really disappointing lack of concentration for him. He's better than that, yes. We've seen him play for Marseille in the Champions League and over the past 7 or 8 years, or maybe a little bit less as a starter there. He's of a certain quality, but, now that he's 30 years old, is it time to think about another keeper being developed as a second choice starter? I'm looking at the likes of maybe Benjamin Lecomte or Paul Nardi from Monaco. I know Hassan's been starting for the under-21s, but Areola, is it maybe time to think a little bit more about the goalkeeping future for this country? Lloris is 29 at the end of the year. France has their keeper through 2022, I would say at least, but beyond that, it's a little bit of a question mark, and there needs to be a little bit more forward-thinkingness, as it were, with goalkeeper for Les Bleus.
Very true. And I think, personally, Benoit Castile would be in there for me if he wasn't injured, but never mind. We will move on to, for the last 5 minutes, to have a little bit of a chat about our very own Philippe Barjil, who's been on some footballing adventures the past few weeks. We felt this would be the perfect time to get your opinion on them. So, first of all, you visited Paris FC a couple of weeks ago, didn't you, Philip?
Yeah, the game against Nancy. So Paris FC are having a quite a strange season because they don't lose very often, but the problem is they don't win very often either. And surprise, surprise, a game which I went to see ended in a draw. Not so. Yeah, first of all, Charletti is a stadium on the south. In the south of Paris. It's actually a bit outside Paris. It's a multi-sport stadium, so it's got an athletics track. So if you're thinking of going there and being close to the players, well, that's not the case. It's got one open stand. That's where they put the away fans. There must have been something like 50 Nancy fans, which is a good effort on a Monday evening. It was on a Monday evening. It's always a stadium I wanted to do because. Paris FC have been in the third tier for absolute decades, and now they're in Ligue 2, and I thought that would be a good opportunity to go and see them. And Nancy seems to be high flying. The east of France actually seems to be on the up because Metz are also having quite a good season. So that was the first. Well, there's not much really to say. I mean, the stadium wasn't full, and I do. It is my opinion. I don't think I'm not saying it's what I think, but I think some Paris Saint-Germain fans who used to go to PSG games, so with the ultra mentality, do attend the Paris FC games because all the songs were PSG songs, except that they said Paris FC instead of Paris SG, which is quite similar.
Nice.
It was all right. It was a nice. It's a nice do. It's quite good.
So, how was the atmosphere like at a game? I mean, Monday night can maybe be a little bit difficult, and sort of what sort of price, if you don't mind me asking, what sort of price range was it as well? Out of my own intrigue.
I think it was 10. Yeah, it was 10. It was 10 euros. It's not expensive, but I just have to say that the second tier of France is just so far behind what it is in England and Germany. I spent 2 years in Munich and basically did every stadium that I could do and most of them were in the Bundesliga 2. I went to games with Munich 1860. So of course I can't stand Bayern, being like every other Munich person, and it's just so much more organized. So getting to the grounds, the communication is so much better, and there's just more money in it. I mean, there's no two ways about it, and too many ways about it. You have to invest in that, and there's such a massive gap between Ligue 1 and Ligue 2. We'll talk about it when we had this relegation promotion debate about Thierry's, is that Ligue 1 has money thanks to Thierry's, but Ligue 2 has absolutely nothing. I mean, Championship side, so the English second division, have as much financial power as Rennes. I mean, I'm maybe exaggerating there, but Championship sides are loaded, and Ligue 2 sides just don't have they don't have anything really. Most of them struggle to get the professional license, with all the costs that this means. It's really a sad state of affairs, and there needs to be investment in that part of French football as well, because Ligue 2 has a lot of talent. We've got a good follower of the podcast, Brendan, who could tell you a thing or two about Ligue 2, yeah, still very very good sides, but it's just so. There's also a deep lack of interest. I mean, people going to a Paris FC game. I mean, I go to games almost religiously, especially when it's a new stadium, but I almost have to force myself to go there, because I had to ask a friend, come on, let's go. It's Paris FC in Ligue 2. They're probably going to go down, so once in a lifetime for sure, or something like that. It's the same with Créteil as well, and I'm thinking about going there as well for actually some kind of Paris derby. But the lack of interest is just puts you off, and it's a shame, really. It's a shame. In Germany, there was no worries about being motivated. You just had the whole football culture thing. It's like if you put me like where you live, Nathan, if you put me in Nottingham, I go and see Forest, I go and see Derby. It's probably the first things I'm going to do. But in France, you're just not going to get. You're just not going to get that. It's a culture thing, and yeah.
Well, the limits aren't even there for someone like me, where the club, there's Notts County, there's Chesterfield, there's Mansfield, all in the same sort of area that. Or at least in league football, so it's a strange thing to always think about. But
it is quite interesting. Something that someone else told me on a forum is that the thing about England is that it's quite small, so you can do loads of grounds quite quickly, and not getting to the stadium is not that expensive. It's actually getting inside the stadium, so it's quite expensive. But compared to England, France is absolutely massive. And Germany is quite big as well. So it's all on the train, on the planes. So getting there, it's quite expensive, and I think it puts off a lot of football fans. Whereas in England, not saying it's the size of Belgium or anything, but you could take the car and go to your away game. It's also the fact that Ligue 2 games are in the evening. It really puts you off as well.
Yeah. It is a strange turn of events, but thank you for that, Philip. But we'll have to end tonight here. But thank you for everyone for listening. Thank you for Eric and Philip for your time, and we will see you again next week, everyone. Have a good evening.